everyone, and welcome to this video, Azure Synapse, your analytics platform of choice. My name is Devesh Govender. I'm a data and AI specialist with Microsoft in South Africa, and I have two of my colleagues with me here today, so let's get introduced.
Thank you, Devesh. My name is Chetan Gordon. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft.
Thank you for having us today, Devesh. My name is Yuri Bejnath. I'm a cloud solutions architect at Microsoft.
Okay, excellent. So tell me, guys, why is Azure Synapse Analytics the leading cloud-based analytics platform?
So that's a great question, Devesh. I think one of the standout points for me, and based on experience, is that Synapse provides a platform for everyone in an end-to-end manner. So there's something in it for all types of users.
Right. But then, what specifically does it offer that competing platforms may not offer at this point in time?
So what you have in the workspace, Azure Synapse Workspace, are components that each individual role can perform. So for your data analysts to explore the data, for your data scientists, for your data engineers to work in a common workspace to collaborate and get out data assets for the organization.
Okay, and that's all in one place. You spin up one instance of Synapse in the cloud, and you get all of these things, and we're going to talk a bit about that now, right? So then let's do that. Let's talk about the architecture behind Synapse, those pieces.
Sure. So one of the core components is your SQL pool. So think of your SQL pool as what used to be traditionally your Azure SQL data warehouse. So it's provisioned compute, and you can use that for running your day-to-day activities, your report generation, queries, and stuff like that.
So your SQL pool is for structured data in the manner of a traditional MPP data warehouse. Benefits of MPP firstly, before we go on to the bigger picture.
So in your MPP architecture, you've got your control node, which manages the data distribution over your compute nodes. And what happens is the work gets done on the compute node at elastic scale. And once the compute's done, it renders that back to the managing node, and it'll continue servicing the requirements of the analytics that you're doing.
Okay, so that's a cloud-based MPP platform. Traditional data warehousing, we can put structured data there, right? Before we go on to the other bits, we also have something called SQL On Demand. Now, what's this all about?
Okay, so SQL On Demand is your serverless SQL pool, right? If you're looking at the workspace, it offers users the ability to explore data with the compute that's provisioned for you at real time. There's no need to manage these compute. It all gets provisioned as you work in the data and explore the data for the user.
It's very interesting. I'm not provisioning compute upfront, paying for compute. At the time of necessity where I need to run queries, and if I'm using SQL On Demand, I pay for how much data I'm processing, and the compute's just there for me in the cloud. Right? So that's effectively what it
correct.
is. Okay. Now that's a great concept. So tell me, Yuri, I mean, when would you use either one of these two? Because why would you not always go SQL On Demand?
So traditionally, the SQL pool is kind of what we look at for your day-to-day reporting and BI requirements. So think about it from a Power BI perspective, where users are accessing a dashboard and the queries go back to your MPP data warehouse, and it pulls that back. So that compute is typically always available to you. Where the on-demand comes into play is that if you've got ad hoc data exploration that's required. So you've got a terabyte of data, you've ingested in, and you need to understand what's in that data. So you use your on-demand.
That sounds a lot like what a data scientist would do.
Exactly. And hence we position the platform as a multi-type of user platform, where there's something that everybody can use the platform for, instead of having various different tools to do things in. Yeah.
So I guess that's the point of Synapse, right? More than just your traditional warehouse. This is the future, one analytical platform, right? You mentioned we cater for various types of users. So I'm assuming we can do a whole bunch of languages in terms of queries, cover some of those.
So some of the languages, I mean, obviously T-SQL would be a front runner. Some of the newer ones that we cover these days are Java, Scala, R, and of course Python. And we can make use of Python in Jupyter Notebook style notebooks.
And the data is being pulled through Synapse, and the processing is being done on Synapse.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I read the other day something about in-engine scoring as well. You just want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the in-engine scoring allows data scientists to create their data models and deploy these models into your SQL data warehouse. And what that does is it enables you to use queries, like a predict query or something similar to that, to provide an output to you, instead of having that prediction service hosted in a web service and then someone calling it from there.
So a regression model.
Correct.
Data is coming through the Synapse engine. So this is great. We're really getting to some differentiators here, right? Now the big part is the data preparation. Typically, that would be outside of your warehousing platform. But now we're seeing with Synapse, even this it can be done via pipelines in the Synapse platform. So tell us a little bit about ELT and how that works here.
So you have various options for you to do ELT, right? The first option is a low-code or no-code approach, where you could do copy pipelines and data flow pipelines from within the Synapse workspace, and it's more of a drag-and-drop interface to build these pipelines and ETLs. The next approach could be to go the code-first approach and to build some of this logic within the stored procs, within the data warehouse component of it, so the data SQL pool. The third component that's available to you is to use your Spark engine and notebooks to process your ETL, do the ETL, and then take that data that's processed into your warehouse for reporting and rendering.
So if I've got a lot of unstructured data, I've got one data source, structured and unstructured, I can use Synapse, the same compute, to process structured data on the SQL pool or provision on demand. Can I spin up a Spark pool?
Yes.
And what can you tell me about having used it?
Yes, so the Spark pool is available for you as an engine to process that data. You've got the notebooks that can use the Spark pool, where you can write Python code to explore the data, transform the data, apply business rules to the data, and then render that back into the storage, right, for computation later on, or for training data that you want to do later on.
Right. And all of these can be scaled on demand.
Yeah. And you've got the component of provisioning the pools to the capacity that you require.
And we use like for the SQL pool, the DWU units as a measurement.
Yes, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you've provisioned 1,000 DWUs now that you can't increase that. That's flexibility that Azure allows for. So if you ingest a lot of data and you find that your warehouse is starting to struggle, you can always increase that provisioned compute as well.
Okay, and you can pause Synapse at any time to save on compute costs where you have the pools. Okay, now the one thing we haven't covered, and that alone is really a wide spectrum, really end to end. I'm assuming then we have monitoring and automation of tasks. Maybe Yuri, you want to cover that?
Yeah, sure. So Synapse itself has something called what we call a workspace, and within that workspace there's various hubs, and amongst those hubs is the monitoring hub, which will allow you to track your jobs that are running, when they're running, allow you to understand who's accessing what resources are being consumed, which SQL on-demand service is running, which Spark service is running, and those sort of things like that allow you to also change the security roles, create different types of users, and that sort of stuff. So
I mean, that's really comprehensive set of features there, all managed, all offered as a managed service in the cloud. You don't worry about the underlying architecture. Just before we end, we need to wrap up. I want to ask you, Chetan, I know you're passionate about this. We used to deal with slowly changing dimensions back in the day, and there's a new feature now that really helps with this to make this a lot easier. So how does that work?
So within the data flow pipelines, what you got is a kind of a feature that allows for schema drift to happen.
Schema drift.
Yes, and by enabling that feature, you're not dependent on the schemas that are being read from the data source. Those could change as the data comes in, and you could then commit the data to a new process, an ETL process, and then commit that back into the warehouse.
So I could have a Parquet file with a slightly different format.
Yes.
Loading, in this case, in one scenario only, I've got a star schema on my SQL pool, and it handles the schema drift from the source to the end table state.
Yes. So let's say if there's additional fields that added to that schema over time, for instance, addresses get added to, let's say, your customer information, the pipeline will be able to still process that information correctly without any errors and issues on that. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think that's it, guys. Let's wrap up there.
Maybe one more feature that I'd like to highlight is on the data scientist space, right? So we're asking, where does data scientists play in Synapse? What you have is your notebook capability, where the data scientist can spin up the notebook and work in Python and explore the data and then consume the data for data machine learning purposes and produce a model that will then be used by business to make predictions on a really great platform for that collaboration to happen.
I think with the increase in ML projects that we're seeing across enterprise customers, let's not underestimate the usage of that. That's going to be quite big. Okay, thanks, guys. Let's wrap up. So thanks for the overview on the various capabilities. It really does look like an all-in-one platform in the cloud, common point of billing, managed service for you. So for me, Tavesh, I hope you enjoyed that. It really does look like Azure Synapse is your best choice for an analytics platform in the cloud. Until next time.